Couch potatoes, gamers, metalheads. We are back with another Friday Night Live. It's tonight. I got a very, very special guest, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys to go ahead and put on your earmuffs if you guys are sensitive, because my guest is Tony Polanco, and he doesn't have very many nice things to say to you. But that's not exactly the reason I have him here. I have him here because I want to make sure. Am I saying Tony Polanco right? Am I saying your name right?
I'm going to say, okay, first of all, Mike, thank you for having me on. This is a big honor for me. You're like one of my favorite YouTubers, like just of any genre. Like you're great. So I'm really glad, we're able to collaborate like this. But yes, a lot of people get my last name wrong. You got it right the first time.
Okay.
So thank you for
good.
that.
That's
Yeah.
encouraging. I
Yeah.
think
People
about
go
everybody
Polanco. I'm like,
right.
what the fuck? But I should wait. Should I like wait 2 minutes until I start cursing for YouTube?
That's the reason that this channel, I don't really worry about the algorithm or anything like that. Yeah. So if they feel like they have to demonetize a video because I said fuck in the first 2 minutes, well then, hey, there we go. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I actually found you. You followed me on Twitter about, I don't know, 6 months ago. And I was like, oh, wow. I remember reading this guy's articles in PC Mag, because when I was looking to actually make the change from console gaming to PC gaming, I was looking for lots of advice, because I was like, it's a big commitment. I never really had messed around with keyboard and mouse and all that stuff. I was like, but you know what? You can do everything from a controller now. This is great. And it was some of your articles on PC Mag. Are you still writing for PC Mag?
No, I was freelancing for them for a couple of years, and now I'm a full-time writer for Tom's Guide, where I basically review. Like I just completely switched over from gaming. I do some gaming, but I review desktops, laptops, all that stuff. But it's funny you mentioned that because that's how I was originally. I was always a console guy, right? And then when I started making like decent money freelance, I'm like, hey, maybe I should try this PC stuff because I've always been into graphics, right? So I built my first. I didn't build it. I just went to Micro Center, had them build it for me. So and I was like, yo, this is dope. And then around that time, I started writing for PC Mag, and it's like, okay, we mostly focus on PC games, so that's how I got into it. But I'm like you, man. Like I like my controller, and even I don't play in front of my like monitors and stuff. I play it on my TV. Like my PC is plugged into my TV, so I just basically replicate the console experience. I don't like this right here where I'm at right now. This is where I work or podcast. I don't want to game in front of my setup here, like I want a distinction. Again, if you guys can't tell, I'm from New York. You can't tell by the accent. I live in a very small apartment, so it's like, okay, this spot's my bedroom, this spot's the living room, and it's the same fucking space, basically. So I got to make those like mental distinctions,
Right. No, I think back to my apartment days where I didn't have to worry about kids or any of that stuff. But that's no fun. Nobody wants to hear about that stuff. But so Tom's Guide. So if I want to know how to like hard reset my iPhone, that's where I go, right? Because I know whenever you Google that, that's what pops up, right?
Yeah, that's what they do. And like that's the phone team, they handle all that stuff. But yeah, if you want to know all that fun stuff, you go to Tom's Guide. We got you covered. We also do like house cleaning tips and stuff, which is kind of interesting. Like that was something new we brought in like when I kind of joined, and we also do some fitness stuff. Just kind of, we're just guiding you for everything. But me, I just stick to the nerdy PC stuff.
Right. So Tony sounds like a Sopranos character to me. Great accent.
Yeah. That's just the way I talk, man. I can't help it. I've been living in New York since 1987. I came here from Dominican Republic in 1980. So, like, this is just how I talk, bro. No,
love it. Here's a question I got for you. Now, I want to know, because I feel like this conversation is going to head this way eventually. Mm-hmm. What is your favorite video game of all time, and why is it Mass Effect?
It's funny because I talk about Mass Effect probably the most, but my single favorite game of all time is actually Metal Gear Solid 3.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, and I can explain that because that was like the first game. This is going to sound weird, but it was the first game where I was like, this is the greatest movie I've ever played. It just felt like I was in a movie, but I was interacting with it. But obviously, Mass Effect 2, oh my God. Like that is like the greatest like season of a sci-fi show, if you could imagine. Think about it like this, right? In any show, really, you have your main arc that goes through the entire season, plus you have a bunch of little side stories in between, right? That's Mass Effect to a T. Mass Effect 2 specifically. But
I
yeah,
remember being so
yeah,
excited counting down to the original Mass Effect because at the time I was like, BioWare was still automatic for me.
yeah.
Think back to then, I couldn't wait for that game to come out. And then when it came out, I was like, "Are you guys playing Mass Effect?" And I was like, "I don't even know what you're talking about right now." And like everyone I told about it, they're like, "Okay, I'll check it out." And they were like, "Holy hell, it's amazing! Why haven't I heard of this?" Then it kind of started to slowly build up. It wasn't until I think 2 when it got like just massively popular amongst the masses. And I'm no pun intended there, but
Yeah, right.
yeah,
No, yeah, you're right about that. And it's funny about the first Mass Effect, right? Because I remember seeing all that hype. By the way, 2007, man, that was like the Cambrian explosion of gaming, right? We
right.
had Mass Effect, Uncharted, BioShock, Assassin's Creed, Modern Warfare. All these games all came out that Uncharted, all those games came out that year, right? But I remember the hype for it, and I was like pissed because I didn't own an Xbox. I was a PlayStation guy. You
Mm.
can't tell from the logo here, right? But I remember like, oh, I need to play this game. I need to play this game. And then when Mass Effect 2 was announced for PlayStation 3, I was like, okay, I need to play this game somehow. And one of my buddies had an Xbox. So I was like, yo, can I borrow Xbox? And I played Mass Effect. Mass Effect, the first one, was the Star Trek game I've always wanted, right? Like, because I was like, dude, I've spent so much time in a Citadel just talking to aliens. I'm like, this is so cool. I'm really living in this world, right? And it's funny about the first Mass Effect game because I felt the controls were atrocious.
Right.
They were really bad, but the story, the characters, the setting was so compelling. I finished the whole thing in like 2 days. I'm like, this is fucking phenomenal, And then obviously you play Mass Effect 2. The controls were a lot better. It was interesting because it didn't have that grand scale scope or whatever of the first game, but like I think the characters were a little bit stronger in that. And I'm like, this is everything I could have wanted. This is great. And then of course we had Mass Effect 3. That was good up until
I think what Mass Effect 2 did better is it fixed the loyalty missions. It's like the first one, they felt like, okay, I'm just doing this to get the bonus item. Whereas the second one was like, I want to know more about these characters, So yeah, it was like a really, really well written, like Joss Whedon TV show or something where you had your main arc, but you had like the character of the week, and you really kind of got that feel of, okay, this is what makes this character tick, and I know more about them now. So I think those loyalty missions were really, and of course the replay value, because had tried to make it through the suicide mission with everybody intact, So
did you die? Did anybody die on you the first
man,
time?
the first time I played it, like they could blank on her name right now, the love interest, like she died my first time playing through.
Oh,
I was like,
wow.
oh shit.
Who, Miranda?
Yeah, Miranda.
Yeah. Oh, wow. What's funny about the suicide mission? I didn't know the characters could die because basically, if you do every single side quest in the game, everybody will live, right? And I'm always that dude. I always got to complete everything. So I played the game like, this is awesome. Like, oh yeah, who did you have die? And you're like, nobody. I'm like, yeah, you could have people die. So I purposely because I replayed the game a million times. I purposely went on my way to do everything wrong, so everybody died in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. It's funny to think about Mass Effect in retrospect. Like you get the illusion of choice. It's not really a choice. Like everything kind of goes a certain way. Like there may be some variables that change within the actual game, but the main story kind of sticks with its path. But I like that illusion. It was satisfying to me. I was okay with it. But yeah, man, such a great series. Like that is like on par with some like of the best sci-fi stories I've read. Like the world just feels so rich,
I've told people I felt like that was the best sci-fi universe in Star Wars. That I really was just like, just invested in that. Like, so I wanted to like read books and stuff based. I thought that was just so good. And then 3 kind of broke a lot of our hearts. But you know what? The first like 75% was legit. I was like,
Yeah,
hey,
it was
great. I cured the genophage. This is awesome. I'm having a great time with this. And the thing is because I said that with part 2 is I did have some key characters dying. They're like, yeah, well, what happens in that game? You use your save file, and it continues in part 3. I was like, okay, so I got planned to replay it before 3 comes out, so I can save as many characters as I can. So yeah, I probably played part 2 through like 6 times. I even played as female Shep a couple times.
Yeah, I've done that too. Did you play the legendary edition?
I got it on Game Pass, haven't I? Because I was going to say if my kid wanted to play it. My kid has no interest in games with storyline yet. He's just like, he just wants to skip the storyline and get them play the game. And I was like, yeah, you're probably too early for you. We'll stick with Zelda for now.
Yeah. The reason I bring it up because I replayed it because I reviewed it. I think I did review that for PC Mag, and they fixed the controls of the first game, so it's a little bit more like the second one. But I was really floored, and this may be a little bit of a theme of what we may discuss tonight. Just how like basically you don't get games with stories this earnest anymore, right?
Mhm.
Like nothing was played for laughs. Everything was very serious, right? Like they got a little bit sillier, more Josh Whedon stuff sprinkled into the other games, but this one was just dead serious.
Yeah.
And I kind of, I don't know about you, but I get this kind of Pavlovian thing. Like after like maybe 5 minutes watching a movie, I'm expecting a joke to drop. I blame Marvel for that shit, you know? So like when this game isn't doing that, I'm like, oh, whoa,
Yeah,
okay.
no joke to break the tension. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, God,
Like they
Marvel.
just let it happen.
You know
Man.
what's worse about that? Now here's where we're gonna start getting into the grumpy old
Right.
man stuff. Is because of the MCU success. Now every other franchise thinks they have to do that. Lord of the Rings is trying to do that. Star Wars is trying to do that. It's like, guys, that's not. We don't watch Star Wars or Lord of the Rings to get Marvel. What are we doing? What are we doing? But, with their
Oh my
success,
God.
you knew they were going to try to replicate them. So
Yeah, and it's again, I know maybe I shouldn't, but I do blame Josh Whedon for this shit.
right.
You know, it's
No, I
like
get it.
because everybody, I know he didn't intentionally try to do this, but everybody's ripping off of him, and it's just sprinkled in. It really got going, I think, with Guardians of the Galaxy. That's when that stuff really went into overdrive. I really liked the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Don't get me wrong, but it seemed after that the MCU was like, let's just do more of that, and that's why everybody loves Thor Ragnarok. I fucking hate that movie. That I'm like, this is just Guardians of the Galaxy. What the fuck is this bullshit? You know, like, okay, say what you want about the first two Thor movies. They were not great. I will absolutely admit that. But at least they had their own like style. They had their own flavor, right? The Ragnarok was like when you had the beginning with the dog Cerberus, it was just goofy. I'm like, okay, I know where this is going, and it just went downhill after that, man.
I
And
had
you're right.
fun
It's
with
just
Ragnarok, but I can definitely see why people didn't
yeah,
like it. But here's the thing:
yeah.
it's like
Mhm.
compare Thor Ragnarok to what we got in Phase 4, and Thor Ragnarok's like the fucking Avengers now, compared to Phase
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny you mentioned that because that's the way I feel about episode 1 through 3 of Star Wars, right? I've always liked the stories of those movies, but I will admit those were not good movies. The
Right.
acting was terrible. But after the new movies, those seem like fucking masterpieces because at least they still felt like Star Wars.
Right. I've
You
said
know?
that. It's like I can accept that the direction and maybe some of the casting was bad. Because I mean,
Yeah.
look, love George the storyteller. He should have hired a director for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing with that was like after Disney Wars, I'm like, shit, I think they kind of validated the prequels,
They really
in fact,
have.
I've embraced the memes of the prequels at this point. I have such a good time with the memes of prequels now. So
Yeah, no, I'm glad you bring it up because I've always felt when I was watching the first 3 episodes, I was like, I wish George Lucas at least hired a director for the people, because like his cinematography, those movies, you could shut the volume off and follow it perfectly. It is just so well shot, right? It's just the acting's just clunky, but apparently that was done on purpose to kind of replicate the old like 1930s serials. Like, listen, I appreciate that. That's cool. No, because I remember when I first watched the episode 9, right? The one of the only decent of these new movies, right? Even though it's just a retread of episode 4, I was like, hey, the acting's good. This is nice. I appreciate that. I have my problems with episode 9. Don't get me wrong, but what came after that movie seemed decent too. That one. What the hell was the name of it? The episode 9. I'm
Rise of Skywalker.
I think that's the
Force
last.
Awakens.
Yeah, Force Awakens. That's the one.
Force Awakens was bearable, but it's bad in
Yeah.
hindsight now. Yeah,
it's bad in hindsight now. And I still like Rogue One. I still like that movie. That was a good one. But after that, man, The Last Jedi. Okay, let me talk about Last Jedi. I saw it. I thought I was crazy. I was like,
I got on Twitter ready to rip that movie apart, and everyone's like, "This is the best Star Wars movie since Empire Strikes Back." I'm like, "What the fuck did you guys watch? Holy shit, that was awful! That was awful." I was like, "They completely ruined Luke Skywalker." And everybody's like, "Oh, it's amazing." I'm like, "What?" But you know what? Here we are, 5 years later, and everyone acts like that movie's dog shit now. I'm like, "Where the hell were you guys 4 years ago?"
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned. Yeah, no, you're right. It's funny you mentioned that because I remember. And we talked about this beforehand, right? Before we went on air. I'm going to skirt some things. Certain people of a certain persuasion love that movie, right? So I purposely didn't say much about it because I didn't want to get on their bad side. So it's been only within the last year where I'm like, you know what? I don't care. This movie's awful. I remember, dude, I watched it. I'm like, am I crazy? Like, is there something wrong with me? I went to go see it a second time, right? And I was like, no, this movie's just awful. This
I
is just
watched it a second time with my kid, and
yeah,
here's the thing. I don't want to influence him. I don't want him to be that type where he has the same opinions I have. So I
yeah,
didn't
that's
know
good.
nothing about Last Jedi. And I let him watch it. And we're about 3/4 through it. He's like, I don't like this. And I'm like, why? What's the problem? He's like, this isn't Luke Skywalker. And I was like, this is a 7-year-old kid saying this. That isn't
Wow.
Luke Skywalker. I'm like, if he can see it, I don't know why everybody else is pretending that this was something amazing. I'm just so over deconstructing superheroes at this point. I'm over it.
Deconstructing is lazy. It's just like in life, right? It's hard to build things. It's easy to destroy, So it's like you guys are just lazy now with this stuff. Build something, please, something that's inspiring. And that's the problem with a lot of these movies now. It's like everything's deconstructed, everything's just morose and just bleak. Like, what the hell happened to movies that inspire you? Watch something, you're like, yeah, that's fucking awesome.
Right.
You don't get that anymore, man. And I'll say this, and Mike, I had to bring this up as a prop, and you will love me for this, man. You know what movie kind of reminded me? Movies were good. This fucking movie, Dune,
of course, hell yeah.
Okay, so full disclosure, I've never seen the original David Lynch one, right? But I saw this. I was like, the previews. I'm like, damn, this looks fucking good. I better read this book, right? Read the book. I fucking love that novel. What a great novel! It gave me that feeling of when I watched Star Wars for the first time. Mm-hmm. This vast world, just coming up to me. By the way, when I read that fucking book, I'm like, damn, Lucas, really?
Yeah,
you just ripped half this shit off.
Yeah, my kid was interested in watching the movie just because I want to know why the book's so important to you, and he's like, I'm not going to read that right now. He's 10. But we watched it, and like the whole time he's like, hey, this is just like a Star Wars. Hey, this is just like a Star Wars. Like, yeah, this was written before Star Wars. He's like, so they get sued? I'm like, no.
And I had the same feeling when I read Princess of Bars. I'm like, Lucas, are we kidding me right now, dude? But anyway, going back to Dune, again, when I was watching this movie, I had the same feeling. I'm waiting for the jokes. Right? None of that stuff, right? And I did a podcast for it, and one of my panelists, he was like, man, I love the special effects in Dune. I'm like, the movie had special effects. That's how good they were. Like, you don't know, they don't stand out. It's just, I'm like, remember the days when you had CG and practical effects together and you couldn't tell the difference? Nowadays, it's
like
just
Top
CG.
Gun Maverick. That was like one of the first movies that's done it in a while, and I was like, man, I can't tell what's real and what's not, and that's great. That's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so but going back to what you're saying, the MCU really ruined movies, and it breaks my heart to say that because even though I was never like a big novel reader, I was an avid comic book reader. I read thousands and thousands of comic books, Marvel specifically, and DC as well. So, and I'm pretty sure you know this too. Growing up, you wish you could get proper good movies based on these characters, right? Like we had maybe one good superhero movie once a decade. We had Superman, the first one, which was great. Most of Superman 2. Batman, even though Batman was killing motherfuckers, it was still good.
Everybody clowns Zack Snyder for that. I'm like, dude, go back and watch Batman Returns. Batman puts a dynamite down a guy's pants and smiles.
Exactly.
People all over the place in the Keaton movies.
But so I remember, and again, we're like the same age, so I remember Blade came out. The first, like, whoa, this is fucking dope. And then right after that, we had the first X-Men movie. I'm like, whoa.
Whoa. Back up, Tony. I'm sorry. Twitter told me that Black Panther was the first black superhero movie.
Yeah. According to them, by the way, I love Wesley Snipes' comeback with that. He was like, "Oh, really?" But even he wasn't the first, right? We had Meteor Man, we had even Steel, right? Mantis on Fox. We had a. By the way, I love how people claim that like we're getting all this diverse stuff now. We had this stuff for decades. It's just these people don't understand that history didn't start like 2 years ago.
No, like we had with sports fans is like they try to pretend everything that happened before they were born didn't count. And I'm like, you're excluding some of the greatest players to ever play the game because you weren't alive yet. That seems like an interesting choice. Yeah,
man, I remember. This was insane. This is article, I believe it was on IO9, right, which is a fairly big sci-fi website, right? They had an article, and this was not a parody, about how amazed the writer was over the diversity of the first Alien movie. It's like, oh my God, a strong female lead, and there's black characters in this. I'm like, you realize movies like this were commonplace for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So it's frustrating as all hell. I didn't even know what the hell I was going to say. Now I got flustered over that shit. But yeah, okay, going back. Okay, love comic books. So I remember, okay, so we had Blade. I'm like, this is dope. The first X movie, which I first I was like, they don't even got the costumes right. This is gonna be whack. So I'm like, this is good. Then we had Spider-Man, right? The first Spider-Man. I'm like, okay, we just had three. Yeah, we just had three great superhero movies in a row. You felt the tide shifting. And what was the key? They were actually giving us the characters we knew from the comics. Yes, it wasn't 100% exactly the same one to one, but the characters, they were the same people we read, right? And we had this great rush of movies for like the 2000s. I know there was like a low point. It's funny how, okay, Blade, X-Men, and Spider-Man set it all off, right? All of their sequels were fucking awesome, right? And then the third entries were all trash.
Yeah,
right?
And then Daredevil kind of was like, well, I fucking love Daredevil, like the comic, the Frank Miller run on Daredevil is just amazing. So that's why when the Netflix series was going really good, I was like, yes, because they're following the Frank Miller model. That's why they should do it. And that stuff that's coming out in Disney Plus, I'm telling you guys, it's not going to be the same. It's not gonna be the same.
They just recast Vanessa, right? Vanessa Fisk, I believe. Like, I'm like, what are we doing?
I know
here,
that
guys?
they aren't bringing Karen or Foggy back, and I'm like, man, I know that a lot of people had hot takes about Foggy, but I'm like, Foggy's a huge character in the comic book, man. That's like them not bringing Elektra back. What's the point?
So, you need Foggy. That's ridiculous. I'm scared of what they're gonna do. But yeah, that first season of Daredevil, that was like one of the best seasons of any television show. Like, this is so good. Like you said, they captured the spirit of the Frank Miller comics, man. I love those, by the way. Those are so good. I still the scene I still remember vividly is when Daredevil goes into the Kingpin's vault, and for like 3 pages, he's struggling to open this fucking door. He's like, and Frank Miller just wonderfully describes like how the sinews is popping and everything, right? So he finally gets the door open a little bit, goes into the vault, he's exploring. He hears like a thunderous heartbeat. Wasn't Fisk just throws the door open in like one motion. Daredevil goes in there, he tries to fight him. Fisk is just like, meh. Slaps him away. I'm like, whoa. Oh, so good. So good.
Yeah, and D'Onofrio was great as Kingpin, man. He's like D'Onofrio is so good as Kingpin that, like, seriously, if I go and read a Daredevil comic now and it's Kingpin, like, I'm hearing D'Onofrio's voice in my head because he was so good as that character. So I'm glad he enjoyed it so much. He's been, if you follow him on Twitter, he's been stumping to come back as that character for a while. So I want to give that revival the benefit of the doubt. I'm just Disney Plus just seems to just fuck up everything I love. So
they really have, man. It's so bad. By the way, again, talk about how people don't understand their history, right? I remember somebody going, "Oh, Wilson Fisk kind of looks like that alien from Men in Black." It's like it's the same actor.
Yeah,
it's the same actor, guys.
So here's something I get a lot about the argument about what's the best Spider-Man movie, because it's like I think Tom Holland's really great as Peter Parker, but I think I love Far From Home. But why did I love Far From Home? The nostalgia of the Sam Raimi movies, which I think are better, except for 3. I still think Spider-Man 2 by Sam Raimi is the best Spider-Man movie we've ever gotten. I'm saying this as someone who's been reading Amazing Spider-Man since he was like 3 years old. Before Dan Slott showed up and completely ruined that comic. So I don't know. I know that people think that I just hate the MCU, and I'm just like, no, I just don't. I feel like that's Iron Spider. That's not Amazing Spider-Man. But I do think he plays Peter Parker really well. Really.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of like Henry Cavill as Superman. Great Superman, bad Superman movies, right? Tom Holland's that way. I think if he was in a better Spider-Man films, he'd be good because he has that feel of it. It even does a halfway decent, like, little New York accent, which I appreciate. But yeah, it'd be nice. By the way, I had my problems with that third Spider-Man movie because I'm like, you're emphasizing the fact that the best moments of this franchise happened 20 years ago.
Right.
Because the new movies, right? They haven't really. I think the first one with the Vulture, he didn't even throw a punch. Spider-Man, like there was like nothing going on there. But yeah, I agree. I say this. I will say this till the day I die. Spider-Man 2, one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. Like I still rewatch that. It's just that feel like you really did feel like you were reading a comic book. You had that same like sense of urgency. And it's funny, Spider-Man, I forgot what issue was. I just know it was like a cyborg holding Spider-Man above like his head the cyborg was holding a knife. That's the first Spider-Man comic I ever bought. Oh man, like dude, I could do a whole podcast alone just my love of comic books. And I remember there was a time on Twitter, believe it or not, where you could discuss comics and things would be civil. Can't do that
Man.
anymore.
Like around like 2014, 2013, when I first got on Twitter, it was so great. It was all sports and movies and everybody got along.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thing with the reading was it was like, I don't know if maybe I just hit old man age where I got to the point where I changed. I turned into my parents and everything modern sucked. But I was like, everything was just becoming just movies and games and TV was just shit. So I was like around 2015, 2016, that's when I just started like, I went from reading like, a dozen books a year to reading like 60 books a year. And that's kind of where I'm at now, where books just kind of replaced. I mean, I already was an avid reader, have been since I was younger.
Yeah.
But that's why reading just became like, I'm just going to focus a little more on this because I just think that media had just gotten bad. Like I said, I don't know if they changed or if I changed or what changed, but something clearly changed for me. And that's why I kind of backed off a little bit. But I mean, I enjoyed the MCU until Endgame. I mean,
Endgame, yes.
felt like the natural end, and it was a good end. I was very satisfied with it. I thought Infinity War was like one of the best, like, holy shit movies I'd seen since like Empire Strikes Back. I gave that shit its props a lot. It's just it's like I feel like it's if you stayed at a party too late and all the people you wanted to talk to are already gone. That's kind of what it feels like.
That's a great analogy.
And I know that people who have grown up with it, they don't want to let it go. But I mean, Phase 4 was terrible, guys. It was
absolutely
terrible. And I think that with Ant-Man, I think they're seeing now that even the diehards are starting to kind of be like, I think the magic might be gone, And I'm tired of every movie being 95% CGI. It just doesn't look real. It just takes me out of it.
Yeah, no, and that's why Dune was so refreshing on every conceivable level, right? The acting, the storytelling, the special effects. I'm like, whoa, we don't get movies like we used to get movies like this. We don't get those anymore. And I don't think it's really a age thing. I think it's a quality thing because I have younger friends that are like, what's going on here? And it is very sad because again, I grew up with this. I remember that feeling when you saw the first Avengers movie, like, holy shit, they're doing it. They actually brought 5 movies together into one. This is just like a comic book. And when Thanos shows up at the end, you're like, me and my boys went through. We lost our fucking minds. It's like, this is great, man. But that feeling was it's just gone. You're right after Endgame because Infinity War and Endgame were so good, so good. But you know what it is with Twitter. People don't see that stuff. Like when you and I have praised some of these movies, right? But nobody sees that. It's just, oh, you guys are haters now. Yeah. No, we just hate the bad shit. Phase 4 is bad. For me, I know some people like Spider-Man. That's great. I haven't seen a single thing from Phase 4 that I like. I think Doctor Strange was the final straw for me. I'm like, okay, if even Sam Raimi can't save this shit, I'm done. Like that, what a disappointment it was because there was some really cool shots in there, visual shots, right? But the story was atrocious. It was just like, but that's par for the course with these MCU movies and movies in general, because everybody else wants to be like the MCU now. It's like, oh, everybody needs to be quippy. Everything needs to be funny. It's like, come on, guys, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And then everybody wants to make a shared universe. Remember the Universal Monsters movies?
Yeah, the monster. Yeah, something like with the Dark Universe. That's what they're calling it.
Lasted one movie. Oh man, I was actually kind of interested. I really was because I mean I love the Universal Monsters.
Yeah.
I was like, I think it'd be really really great. And it's like this doesn't have to be hard, guys. You're just trying to do it too quick. I don't know. I feel like they just. Yeah. I'm just a dude. What do I know? But I just feel like, gosh, I wish you guys would just take your time and let stuff just develop organically. But it's easy for me, someone who doesn't have to go and get investor money, to say these things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, they're supposed to be making these movies for us, aren't they? Like, there was a time, believe it or not, people, when these Hollywood folks made movies to entertain people. Now it's just to preach nonsense. It's like, come on, man. Or just to like, hey, they like this. Let's rip off another franchise. Like, what happened to original stuff? We don't get that anymore. And it's kind of funny how like movies and games are a little bit parallel in this respect. You either have big AAA blockbuster movies and games or indies, and then the stuff in the middle, which is really where the best stuff was. It's all getting gutted now.
So let's talk about some gaming here. All right. Yeah. What is the last game you played that kind of blew you away? Was it Elden Ring? I think Elden Ring was your jam, right?
Yeah, Elden Ring was fantastic. It was a little bit of an easy layup because I've really been a fan of those From Software games for while now. Even though initially when I played Demon Souls back in the PS3 era, I was like, "Oh, this is too much, man." Like I played these type of fuck you in the ass games when I was a kid. I don't need to deal with this. I paid my dues, you know. But then when I played Bloodborne, I was like, "Whoa." This is different, because it wasn't just your standard medieval type of thing. It was like Victorian. Have you played Bloodborne by any chance, Mike?
Man, look, here's my deal.
Yeah.
I don't play these games that are so ridiculously hard that they just make you want to flip tables. I'm like, look, I get very little time for gaming. I don't have time to play the same level 400 times to maybe
Yeah.
figure it out. So
Yeah, no, that's
I
fair.
respect that
Yeah.
people love those games, but it's just no. I need a difficulty setting, I guess.
Yeah, but what was great about that is like it's like Victorian era type of vibe. I'm like, this is cool. And then halfway through, it's like, oh yeah, here's some Lovecraft shit. I'm like, okay, this is awesome.
That sounds cool.
This is great. Oh, by the way, a little bit of a side. That's actually how I discovered you. I saw one of your videos about why you should reach HP Lovecraft. And when you said, guys, I'm not going to talk about the controversy. I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you. We just talk about the books.
I made that decision a while
Yeah.
back. I was like, look, if you want someone to talk about all the controversial stuff or problematic stuff with every author, there are a million other channels out there going to do that. I'm always just going to talk about the book. That's just my style.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that a lot, but that's why I'm like, okay, this guy's different than some of these other guys. I'm gonna keep checking out. But yeah, so I got into the franchise loosely because there's a bunch of different games with Bloodborne and then obviously Elden Ring. Initially, I was a little bit on the fence about it because it just throws you into the world, kind of expects you to just figure it out, right? And that's something I didn't really like about the Breath of the Wild, right? I was like, well,
yeah, I love that.
yeah, I'm like, where's my direction here? But then it slowly kind of I started clicking with it. So it's like, okay, when I'm in the open world, it's just go where you go. But as soon as I get into a dungeon, then we're in standard Soulsborne mode. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I love that game and it's funny because that game isn't like the most graphically intensive or anything like that, but that feel like you really like that sense of discovery. It's like, hey, what's over there? What's over here? What's in this cave? Oh, this is cool. And then it's also a multiplayer game. I would get together with my friends, because I'm not really into competitive gaming like that, but I like co-op gaming. So I would get together with my friends. We're like, hey, I'm having trouble with this dungeon. Want to help me out? Oh, can you help me grind for this thing or whatever? It's just so much fun. So yeah, that game was one of the last ones. I feel there was something else that came out last year that was really good. Speaking about Marvel games, I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. That
Yeah, they
game
played
was
it on Game Pass.
fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that was really good. But unfortunately, the last two games I played have been dog shit. It was Callisto Protocol and Forspoken were just awful.
Forspoken was coming out, and you were already telling people how bad it was going to be. And I was just like waiting to see the fallout from that. All I saw was some clips of the dialogue, and I was like, "Holy cringe, Batman! That's terrible." And I don't like to use the word cringe unless it's just really freaking cringe. And that was awful. And again, I think that's the fallout from people being raised on Marvel movies. It's like they think that everybody talks like that, and they don't talk like that, especially not in that setting. Oh my god.
Yeah, like what was it? One of the clips they played was like, "Oh my god, I killed that thing with my freaking mind!" Right? So the meme became, "Oh my god, I killed a franchise with my freaking mind."
Have you played Hogwarts Legacy? Are you going to play it?
Okay, so I've never read or seen any of these Harry Potter movies because I'm just not into kid stuff. Don't get me wrong, I like the Goonies or whatever back in the day, but the thing is, the game looks really good, right? So what I'll probably do is I'll probably pick it up like when it's on sale and stuff, because I am a sucker for pretty graphics, and I always appreciate when a studio puts a lot of money behind a game to make it look as good as possible. And this looks like a really like stellar production, so I do want to check that out, and maybe it'll get me interested. But I think I may be too old for that. I know, you know what I'm saying? Like I know. What do you think about Harry Potter? Like I know you spoke
I love
highly
it,
of it.
but I mean, I think it's, I don't know. I think it just kind of depends on when you read it, because
Yeah.
I do think that there are adults who can read it and still enjoy it quite a bit. But I think if you're one of those people who's been reading like, really smart, epic sci-fi or sci-fantasy, and then you go into Harry Potter, you're gonna feel like, this is way below my reading level. You might feel like that, but I don't know. It's a fun world, but I definitely understand if it isn't for everybody. But besides, I mean, in your business, it might get you canceled if you play that game. So
Yeah, so I got to be careful, you know. That's why, like, I think I'm safe saying I may buy it here, but I obviously, if I do play it, I can't say anything because some people will try to come after me. But it looks interesting. I said that from jump. I'm like, whoa, this game is better looking than it has any right to. Like, it looks
right,
really cool. But you know, it's funny about that. I remember the first Harry Potter movie came out at the same. Believe it was the same year as the first Lord of the Rings movie, right? And I was never like a sci-fi like a fantasy guy. I was always a sci-fi guy. I'm like, what is with this fantasy stuff? Elves, this fruity stuff. What is this nonsense? You know? But when those movies came out, I'm like, you know what? Let me give this a proper shot. Which one am I going to pick? The one with the little kids or the movie or the franchise that's kind of started modern fantasy? We watched
right,
Lord of the Rings, right? I saw that first movie, like, holy shit, this is fucking awesome. Like it
right.
made me feel like when I watched Star Wars for the first time, right? And it's funny because most people would be like, I'm gonna read the books now. You know what I did? Because I love history. I'm a history buff. I'm like, I'm gonna buy the Silmarillion. I love that. That was great. Like, I know some people say it's dry. I'm like, no, I like that. Like, I love that stuff. Just giving me dates and shit. It was so cool. Like, and then that was a great stretch, by the way. Those 3 years when the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out,
Oh
like
yeah,
just
every
the
Christmas.
anticipation between them. And I remember for when Two Towers, right, when it was coming out on I believe it was DVD at that point, right?
Yeah,
I pre-ordered from Amazon. Amazon screwed me over. They didn't get my thing for like 2 weeks. And my friend's just throwing his copy in my face, like, "Hey, Tony, look what I got! Look what I got!" I'm like, "You son of a bitch!" You know. And then I go over his house just to see, you know, the ending. You know, bro, hit him! Like, oh shit, this is awesome. And, you know, and it's funny not to go off too much off topic. It's just funny how the first Lord of the Rings trilogy, right, is a great example of how to do, you know, practical effects and CG, right?
right.
And then the Hobbit trilogy is a great example of how not to do a movie
Yeah,
special
Peter
effects.
Peter
Like,
Jackson fell in love with the special effects. I think.
what happened? I'm like, why is it? And the Hobbit book is awesome. It's a fun book. Why the hell are we getting 3 movies out of it? You only needed one,
Yeah.
2 max. You know,
I was like, hey, if they're gonna do like the appendices or like a bridge movie, that sounds like a neat idea. But I think looking back, I was just being overly positive because I wanted more, you know, because I love that original trilogy so much, and I love the books, obviously.
yeah,
But yeah, looking back on it, was like I remember it was before that Peter Jackson did an adaptation of The Lovely Bones, which was a book that I
yeah.
read and enjoyed, and I was like, why is this movie $108 million to make? And you watch it, it's like, why does it have all these special effects? It's the fucking Lovely Bones. This is about a girl who gets murdered. What is this? And that's when I knew that, oh, Peter Jackson's done pulled a George Lucas and he's done fallen in love with CGI.
Yeah,
So,
that's sad because again, those Lord of the Rings movies were
oh yeah,
exemplary, man.
that's
Like
why they've
last
aged
night,
so great, is
yeah,
because they have that over reliance on that stuff. I mean, we watch those every damn year. I mean, the kids, you know,
yeah.
I love them, never get old of them. But
Do you
yeah,
watch the original theatrical ones or the extended editions?
only extended for me now.
There you go, a man of class.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think back to when Fellowship of the, because I mean, obviously, I mean, I've been reading these since I
Yeah,
was in high school, and when that first movie came out, I was in the theater. I was still, because if you remember, a year before that, the Dungeons and Dragons movie came out, and it was just fucking horrible. It
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah,
and it killed my motivation. I'm just thinking they just can't make fantasy movies. It's just never going to happen. So I'm in the theater. We're an hour into the movie, and I'm like, it's not bad, but I'm still waiting for it to fall off a cliff and go
yeah.
terrible. And Gandalf's fighting the Balrog, and I'm just like, I just start crying. I'm just like, I can't believe they've actually pulled this off. So yes, I was a big old bitch, just sobbing watching that movie. And I
Yeah.
went and saw it
Oh,
7 times in the theater.
yeah.
You know,
I
I
don't
mean,
remember how many times I saw it, but it was a ridiculous amount of times. Like the Mines of Moria, man. That there's just something about that. I was just so good. Like the tension I was built. And I especially love the scene where they're surrounded by like fucking millions of orcs. And you're like,
mhm,
oh shit, how are they getting out of this? You hear in the
right.
background, all the orcs scatter like roaches. I'm like, what the hell just scared these things off? Because again, I'm new to this. I'm like, what is going on here? Oh,
And
so
that's
good.
another thing is
Yeah.
that you go back, if you read the book and then you go watch the movie right after, you'd be like, I can't believe how faithful that was. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen anymore. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen. I mean,
No, it
Dune
really
might be
doesn't.
the exception where it seems like that. That's because the director absolutely loves that book and he just like he is
You
devoted
could
to it.
tell. Yeah, you could tell.
So I
Yeah,
just don't think you would
those
see if they made Lord of the Rings now for the first time. You would get Rings of Power. which is
no,
just
I'm so
disastrous.
glad you mentioned that because I've said this. I don't think I've tweeted this, obviously, but I've said, my friends like, I am so glad those movies were made 20 years ago and not now, because now you would have gotten this trash. That's the fucking Rings of Fire. I didn't even bother with that. I'm like, they're not referencing the Silmarillion, they're not referencing the Lost Tales. Why am I going to watch this? It's just fan fiction.
And it was, yeah, I mean, I tried to be like, you know what,
Yeah.
maybe I can just turn my brain off, just have a good time with it. It was just dreadfully boring.
Oh,
They made
man.
Galadriel completely unlikable. Just all the same stuff you see in every modern
Yeah.
adaptation, where it's just like, this doesn't feel like what I read all those years ago. And people are like, oh, you just can't let yourself enjoy anything. That's bullshit, man. I mean,
Oh,
Dune is my favorite book of all time. And look at that movie. I loved it because it was true to the source material. And I don't think that everything's got to be page for page adaptation. I'm fine with it because I'm getting this a lot when I'm
yeah.
complaining about Last of Us on HBO.
Okay.
Is
Yeah.
everyone, oh, it's the most amazing adaptation ever. I'm like, dude, this doesn't feel like Joel and Ellie at all. This feels like two completely different characters. And people are like, I don't know what you're seeing. I'm like, I don't know what you're seeing. But, so it's not that I can't let myself be happy. It's just like, if it doesn't feel like that story to me, I check out. But I also don't like to be a wet blanket. If other people are liking it, I'll stop talking about it because I want you to enjoy things. I want people to enjoy stuff. I do. I do. But it's when you tell me, oh,
yeah.
Phase 4 was amazing. What are you talking about? I'm like, no, you're high. You're high.
Yeah, you're high on something. And I want what you're having. See, I do the middle of the road. Like, I don't care about being a wet blanket, but I'm also not going to be the guy who's going to jump into your thread to shit on you. I'm like, I'm that stupid. I'm going to be in my corner. I'm going to give my opinion, but I'm not going to be the guy to go into like a thread that's celebrating something to be like, no, this actually is bad. Why would you do something like that? It's stupid. I hate when people do that. It's like, leave people alone.
Yeah,
but it's sad. Real quick, I want to go back to something you said with regard to books, right? Because I had never been like such an avid book reader, like, and I think I blame school for that, forcing these books on us and stuff. It always felt kind of bad, but what started turning it around for me was around the time when I saw the Lord of the Rings, right? One of my other friends who was not into fantasy either, he's like, dude, you got to read these Dresden books, man. They're really good. They're snappy and punchy. So he gave me I was like, which one should I start with? Like, try this one. It was Deadbeat. It was like the seventh book. Like, this is the seventh book. Are you sure about this? Like, just read it. Oh my God, that was so good. So I went back, read the rest of them. I think I stopped like after the 10th book. So I'm right now catching back up. So I'm like, okay, this is fun. But what's cool about the Dresden books is the magic has a cost to it. It still feels kind of scientific in a way where it's like, okay, if I'm going to do this, here's going to be the cost to it. It's not just here's a bunch of weird shit that's happening, and that was good because, and now since I'm so like disinterested, disheartened by media, I've gone really, really into reading, especially because of this, the Kindle. And it's gives me that feeling of something new, like reading Sanderson stuff has been great. Reading have you read The Lost Fleet by John Campbell? That's like a pseudonym. It is really good military sci-fi, very, very cool stuff. Gone back to I'm just like, I wish I could read more. It's just I don't have enough time. But books give me that feeling of what I used to go when I used to watch movies and TV and all that. So
why I sank full on into it. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get to that. And then on my end, it's like it also helps me become a better writer as well. Knowing all this stuff, so that helps. And I'm also trying to see if I could write a novel onto the site. Even though Chat GTP may destroy all that, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. Didn't Chat GPT say you died?
Yeah, it did. Isn't that something? I died in 2000. I either died in 2018 or 2021, and apparently I was mourned. It was a very sad for the day for the industry. It's insane, man. I'm very much alive, guys.
Oh, well, you ain't got to sell me on reading more. I mean, like I said, I think that if you're upset with how everything has been modernized, let's put it that way, I think you just go back to read anything prior to like 2010, and you'll probably have a good time with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember because I saw your video on the best Star Wars books, right? Because I read Shadows of the Empire when it originally came out, because there was a video game around. I'm like, whoa, this is cool. Let me read this. Fucking amazing, right? And I finally got around to reading the Thrawn trilogy, just like everybody's like, why didn't you film this?
Right. In my head,
you had 3 movies right here, you motherfuckers.
They decanonized all that stuff when Disney bought it. I'm like, look, you can say that all you want, but to me, That's still the real timeline. The Disney stuff is the fan fiction, the legends, if you will, in
Legends.
my opinion. So
Yeah,
that's still my canon. Sorry.
what's your like? What's your real take on that? Because to me, that sounds insulting as hell. It's like, hey, you know that stuff you've been reading for 20 years?
When
Doesn't
it
count.
first happened, I mean, I was upset for a little bit, and then I was like, okay, well, we're going to get new Star Wars movies, and they've got the original actors coming back. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, I understand they don't want to be tied down to that canon. I thought that was what it was. I didn't know they were just going to be completely disrespectful to it. At the time, I was still optimistic. You know, I really, really was. Force Awakens wasn't perfect. It did have, wow, this feels very familiar, you know, but I was like, you know what? At least it felt like a Star Wars movie. Okay, I'm optimistic. Like I said, it wasn't until 45 minutes in The Last Jedi where I was like, oh shit. So they wiped all that history clean to do this shit just so they could take a giant shit on Luke Skywalker. That's really why they did all that. Because Luke is still a badass in the books when he's like 60, you know? So it's rough. And in hindsight, it's like, I said this when they restarted making the Halloween movies. It was like, okay, if you're going to wipe all that stuff away, you better do something better. And then they didn't. You know, they didn't do anything better. So that's how I feel about this. If you're going to wipe established canon clean, you'd better make something better. And they never do.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't think a lot of these writers are up to the task. I've been thinking about this lately, how basically the stuff we grew up with was written by people that had a lot of experience with life, right? They had gone to war. They had done all these things, travel the world. Now you basically have movies written by, like, 20 somethings, 30 somethings that have just basically lived in a big city their entire life with no problems. So it's like, what experience can they bring to these stories? What reality can they bring? It's upsetting.
That's a problem in fiction too right now, is like you're writing these characters are just like perfect. I hate to use the Mary Sue phrase because it gets overused a little bit, but it is. It's like these characters have no struggle. How am I supposed to relate to them? I mean, me, someone who grew up, let's just say below the poverty line, it was really hard for me to get to support any character that has like no struggles whatsoever. I'm like, I need to see them struggle. That way, you do the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. They fall down, they get back up. That's what makes you root for them. You go and you watch like the Star Wars sequels, and you're just like, wow, so Rey is just fucking wonderful at everything for no reason at all. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a choice.
Like whatever happened to earning it, that's how you get endeared to these characters, right? It's just everything's just
when they say, well, if you watch the original Star Wars, Luke gets a lightsaber and 3 minutes later no bullshit. Luke struggles that entire, I mean, it's fucking Return of the Jedi. He's still fucking up. Up. So.
Yeah, I hate how they try to gaslight you. It's like, I lived through this, right? Like you can't.
I was like, you understand this was my religion from the time I was 3 years old, right? You're not going to teach me anything on this. So what Geekosity here is saying is, you guys hear they cancel most of the Star Wars movies on the slate. Well, here's the thing. He says, sounds like poor reception, lost revenue has reached a higher ups. Here's the deal. If I was going to believe that, I would believe that Kathleen Kennedy would have been fired by now.
Yeah.
But as long as she's still in charge, and some people are like, oh, well, it's just a title, and it's a role and title only. She's not actually doing anything. I'm like, there's still no movies on the slate. So, but then I saw Jon Favreau the other day saying like, oh, here's how the Star Wars sequel movies are going to play into Star Wars going forward. And I'm like, John, you don't got to do this, man. You don't got to. You don't got to defend that trash. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy, she should have been fired years ago. I remember, and some, either you or somebody in chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember George Lucas asked her to kind of take over because he felt she would keep the spirit of Star Wars going, and she just decided, nope.
You think he regrets that shit? Yeah.
Yeah. Like at this point, I'm like, I want George Lucas to rebuy Star Wars. Like,
what did he say? He said he felt like he sold Star Wars to white slavers.
Whoa!
So, and George, like the most nicest, soft-spoken guy ever. If he's saying some shit like that, and at the time, it was after Force Awakens, and I was like, George is just being a grump, because everybody likes this better than the prequels. Now I'm like, you know what? George was right. He really, really was.
Yeah, he was. Man, I remember I when The Force Awakens came out, everybody was saying it was like, basically just episode 4 all over again. I was like, yes, but it has to reintroduce the Star Wars. I was making excuses for this shit.
Me too.
Me too.
Big time.
Because I love Star Wars
back then.
Yeah, I was making excuses for it. And then, when Rogue One came out, see, guys, they're doing it. But I could not defend Last Jedi at all. I'm like, wow, what was going on here? And then with Solo, I couldn't even finish that movie. Like I can't do this anymore. I got to the part where they met Lando and that robot. Am I going to get into the robot? I'm like, okay, here we go. Here we go. You know, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
That was the thing with me. I was like, with the original Star Wars is like, I never felt like anything. It was sexless, you know. It was just an adventure, and now everything's got to be so fucking sexualized. I don't get it. It's like, how are you going to tell me? Oh, these are kids' movies with space wizards, but then you're going to tell me you're preaching about pansexuality out of a space smuggler? I don't even understand why these two things are the same thing to you. But you know, that's just they should have gave it to Dave Filoni. I agree here with Okie Dokie. If you didn't, I think besides Timothy Zahn and George Lucas, Dave Filoni knows the Star Wars universe the best.
Yeah, no, I agree.
With George for a decade on Clone Wars. He knows this. He should have got the job. He still should have the job.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. I agree. 100% agree with that. And after Last Jedi, I was like, okay, I guess I'm done with Star Wars. This is sad. The Jedi Fallen Order, the game came out. It was getting high praise. I'm like, no, I'm done with this shit. Then Mandalorian came out. Everybody's like, Tony, you got to watch this. This is actually really good. Like, I don't know. I skipped the first season. Then like halfway through season 2, I'm like, okay, let me start watching. I'm like, oh, whoa, this is great. This is what I want to see in Star Wars, you know? And then I went back to play Jedi Fallen. I'm like, this is fantastic. You know, so now but then obviously we had Obi-Wan and Boba Fett. I'm like, oh,
that was the last draw for me. I was like, they're just Last Jedi in this all over again. All they're doing is the same shit they did to Luke. They're doing to Obi-Wan now. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah, but Mandalorian,
everyone's like, you gotta watch Andor. It's the best Star Wars ever. Fuck it, too late.
Nope.
Disney ran out of continues, man. It's too late.
Yeah, ran out of continues, exactly.
So the reason I'm still watching Mandalorian is because my kids love it, and it's like something we do as a family. And you know, I still enjoy it for the most part. You know, they haven't let Miss Kennedy's tendril sneak into that one yet. Apparently, you know, Jon Favreau and Filoni are like basically locking the door whenever they're doing final cut on those episodes. But
yeah, no, you're right. That I enjoyed that last episode a lot. But you could win me with freaking kaiju. Like you give me a big monster. Like remember that I'm not going to spoil anything, but like there was a shot. I was like, whoa, that's cool. What is that?
Yeah,
you know. But I will say. The feel isn't there anymore of the first 2 seasons. Like it felt fresh. Now it kind of feels like they're kind of just circling the wheels or whatever, you know. And there's also a certain character that I really enjoyed who's not on the show anymore for reasons which very upsetting. They just gave a throwaway line. Oh yeah, she's doing some other thing. I'm like, okay, you mean the show that was supposed to be a thing? But
you know, I heard rumors that they basically like admitted they were wrong and asked her to come back, and she was like, "Fuck you."
Good for her.
I was like, you know what?
Good for her. Yeah,
good for her. Yeah. I don't. I'm like I said, I stay away from all that, but I thought that was ridiculous because I was like, wow, we actually have a strong female character that looks like she could probably kick my fucking ass, you know, easily. And I thought she was great on that show. She was. I thought that she rounded out that group really, really well, but. You know, then we get Boba Fett, we get Fennec Shand, who's just, you know, space Jesus. And it's just like, oh my God, Boba Fett's just hanging out in the back to tank the entire season.
Oh, yeah. Like, you know, something was wrong with the only 2 good episodes of that show were like Mandalorian related. like those were the best episodes.
Right,
like, what is like, guys, that's not a good thing, you know? But I also will say, imagine if you were a fan of the Mandalorian and you just skip Boba Fett, right? That must be
I've had people being like, wait, how is Grogu back? And
all
I'm like, yeah, you got to watch season 2.5. It's called episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Boba Fett.
Yeah, so I don't like that. And I say this as a comic book guy. I hate it when they did that in comics too. It's like, oh, you got to read, like you read next one. You got to read Guardians of the Galaxy back before it was the one you knew. You know, it's like you got to read this issue to see what's going on here. I'm like, come on, guys. I'm a kid. I don't have money for this stuff. You know, all these crossovers. But yeah, like you said, everything has to be interconnected now. It's like, no, it doesn't. Can't we just tell things that are independent of each other?
Well, you know, there was a time. Hey, did you play the Dead Space remake?
I haven't. I haven't played it yet. Oh, it's funny about that because at first I was like kind of against it because I felt the first Dead Space was perfect as is. Like, don't change it. It's perfect. And they made a lot of changes. But after the Callisto Protocol was so bad, I want to play it now. And from what I hear, you know, the fans really enjoyed it. And I'm a fan, so I'll definitely check that out.
It looks really cool. My thing is just I'm not paying $70 for a game I've already played, you know, with a new fresh coat of paint. I mean, I'm sure it's great, but I'm like, sorry, but remakes should be $39.99, I think, or less for a remake.
Yeah. Well, this one, I guess, since they built it on a new engine, that's how they justify it. But you know, but just admittedly, I'm in a little bit of a different situation. I'm a game reviewer. I don't have to pay
Right.
for this stuff.
Yeah.
I also have Resident Evil 4. I can't talk about it yet, obviously, because the embargo. So I'll give you my thoughts on that.
Just
Thankfully,
give me one of these or one of these. Or tell me what. Tell me,
Yeah.
is it like the Resident Evil 2 remake or is it like the Resident Evil 3 remake? Can you tell me that?
No, you're trying to get me in trouble now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. No, I understand that non-disclosure
Yeah.
agreements work, but yeah.
Yeah, no, because there's some people that just
I
break
love the Resident Evil
NDAs.
2 remake. And then the
Yes,
3
yes.
remake was like, this is, I mean, I didn't really particularly love Resident Evil 3 at all. So I thought, okay, maybe they can try to make it better. It wasn't.
You know what's interesting? The same complaints, and I'm by the way, I agree with you. I think Resident Evil 3 was weaker than 2. 2 remake was great, but the complaints people had about the remake were the exact same problems they had with the original. Too short, too action focused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. But you're right. It's like if it's called remake, you had a chance to remake it, but they didn't do that. And apparently they even cut stuff from the original, which is really just, I'm like, okay, this game's already short enough as it is. Why are you cutting more content?
Check this out. The no gravity sections of the Dead Space remake are significantly better than the original. Now, those levels pissed me off, man.
Those were brutal. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Hey, there's just a random meteor shower. Check that shit out. How about that? Man, that game was so cool. I was like,
that was great.
Dead Space for the first time. I was like, dude, I feel like I'm playing fucking Alien. Or like Ridley Scott's Alien. This feels just the same way. You got the tight corners and the dark corridors and shit. I loved it, man.
That was great. To me, I was like, oh, somebody really loves Event Horizon.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Event Horizon. Sure. Yeah. Oh man. God, what a game. That's why I was saying I'm interested, but I was like, damn, that one isn't on Game Pass, so I can't, play it for free.
Yeah.
No, I'll go ahead and give you one that I don't recommend. It was day one on Game Pass, so I was excited about it. I played Atomic Heart for about 90 minutes. That was enough.
Oh, really?
It just feels like Walmart Fallout, or if it's someone you're like, wow, you really liked BioShock and Fallout, didn't you? You just basically just try to put those two together, and it's like some of the ideas are neat, but it's like it's been done better just about everywhere.
That's sad because that's the reason I was interested in it. But then I also heard there's some controversy over the developers because they're like, what are they, Russian or something?
They're pro-Russia,
yeah, which is kind of interesting. I'm not going to get into all of Russia stuff. I'm like,
sure.
It's kind of, because we grew up in the 80s, right? Where the Russians were the enemy, and then they were our friends, and now they're the enemy again. Like,
but here's what I want. Here's what I want as a consumer.
Yes, a consumer.
When I read a gaming review, tell me if the game is worth the money. Don't tell me about what the creators did. Don't tell me about what it's based on. Is the game worth the money? That's what I need to know as a consumer. And I don't feel like I get that anymore. Look at every Hogwarts Legacy review. Look at every Atomic Heart review. It's like, can you tell me about the game? So I don't know. I mean, I feel like that with movies too. Tell me if the movie's good. I don't know. That's why I'm glad I did not pursue that journalism degree that I was originally going for.
Yeah. Well, you don't even need that. I don't have a journalism degree.
Right.
I just read a lot of gaming magazines growing up, EGM and all that. But that's one of the tenets I adhere to as a game reviewer. I'm reviewing the game, nothing else. I don't care about that stuff. No one does either. I basically write reviews that I want to read, and I don't want to read that nonsense. So, you come read one of my reviews, you're going to get what you're looking for. None of the silliness. I remember even behind the scenes, I'm not going to name names, but some of my peers have given me flack for some games I reviewed. Like I reviewed Detroit, right? Become Human on PlayStation, and everybody talked about like the stuff that was going on behind the scenes with Quantic Dream, right? I'm not going to get into that now. I just reviewed the game as is. I'm like, I really enjoy this game. This is cool. This is like the kind of game I want. It's like, humans and cyborgs trying to live together and all that, a lot of choices and stuff. But a lot of the reviews are just focused on the controversy involving the studio, and then some of the the racist, like kind of not racist, the racial themes of the game, which I thought were actually very well done, if a little bit ham-fisted. Like, yes, you could have handled this more elegantly, just in terms of storytelling. But I thought that was cool because we will probably have to deal with this stuff as humans eventually. Like when we make actual cyborgs and stuff. Like we're gonna have
Right.
to deal with how we treat them. So it's kind of cool that we're exploring stuff. That's one of the great things about sci-fi. It's like, you go back to Star Trek with Data and all that, like it's those same kind of themes. So it spoke to me as a sci-fi fan. But some of my peers, they're like, oh, why did you talk about this? Why did you talk about that? And I was like one of the few game reviewers. I actually gave the game a positive review. I'm like, I don't care. I like the game. I think it's good. So that's what you're gonna get from me. I'm not gonna lie to you. If I think the game's
Oh,
bad, I
come
will
on.
tell you it's bad.
I'm not gonna get a headline from you that says, "Hey, this game, they really toned down the violence, and that's a good thing." I'm not gonna get that headline
Yeah.
out of you? No?
No,
All right.
you'll get the opposite. They tone down the violence. That's a bad thing. That's what I'll say. I said that about kind of like that with Saints Row. They remade it. Oh, what an awful game. I even said there's like a toothless sequel or toothless remake. Like what I loved about the Saints Row games was like they were like, okay, that's what GTA is. We're gonna go crazier than GTA, and I love that. It gave the game an identity. But with this new one, everybody's like getting along. Everybody's happy. They're just like kind of misfits. I'm like, no, I want to play as a
Oh,
crazy drug
yeah.
lord and
Yeah, gangbanger,
murderer.
son.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, come
right.
on now.
No, I
You
love
know?
the first two Saints Row games were so fun. I played the hell out of those because here's the thing. I have this hot take that
Yeah.
I didn't really like Grand Theft Auto 4 when it came out because the cars were fucking impossible to
They
drive
were
in it.
terrible.
It drove
Yeah.
me nuts. It was like, oh, it's because they're angling for more realism. I don't play Grand Theft Auto for the realism. So that's
Yeah.
why I kind of started leaning more on Saints Row, but
Yeah, no, it's funny because GTA 4, I had such mixed feelings about that one because like I love, I'm a New Yorker, obviously, so I love the representation of the city, Liberty City, right? But that game was depressing, man, because the story was more grounded in reality and stuff. And even by the end, you didn't feel triumphant, when you beat it. Like, I don't know. The story was interesting, but I don't think it fit GTA. That's why I like GTA 5. It brought back that craziness that you want from the series. And I think it was really smart of them to have three characters because they kind of embody the aspects of GTA, right? You have Michael, who is basically kind of like the old school type of gangster and stuff, right? Kind of representing the older protagonist of the series. Then you have, Franklin, who's kind of like, the younger player base, right? Who's, like more urban or whatever. That was really cool. Then you had Trevor, who's literally every GTA player. It's like, I'm just going to go fucking crazy, And
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And I don't know if you did this, but I noticed my play style would change depending on the character, right? When I'm like Franklin, I kind of keep things cool because he's a very calm and collected guy, right? When I'm Michael, I'm mostly all right, but I'll snap every once in a while, just like him. He kind of has this like mental disorder. The instant I play with Trevor, I'm just like going nuts. It's like this is crazy.
You have opinions on Bethesda because we're gonna get into it with this comment here.
Ooh.
Fallout Bioshock would be good if Obsidian handled it. Bethesda wouldn't know what a Fallout game was supposed to be if it hit them in the face. Are you excited for Starfield?
Yes and no. I'll
Cautious
explain. Yeah,
optimism. Yeah.
cautious. Yes. Because again, I love science fiction. Anything, if you're gonna put me square into the middle of a sci-fi world and make me feel like it's real and I can live there, great. But those games are buggy as shit, man. I remember Fallout 3. I played that on PlayStation 3, right? That was one of the most frightening games I ever played. Not because of the content, but because I didn't know when the game would crash and I would lose all my saves. I was constantly like card saving this shit, But underneath it, under the bugs and everything, that is such a cool world. It's like, hey, what if like the 1950s future, vision of the future extended into the actual future? That is so cool,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to do anything equivalent like that with Starfield, but I enjoy the mechanics and I enjoy what they're trying to go for with the Bethesda games, but the bugs are pretty brutal.
That's
I
why I
never,
prefer to
yeah, go
play
ahead.
them on PC because
Yeah,
modders fix everything.
yeah,
You
that's
know?
sad too. It's like have the modders fix your shit.
It is. I mean, Bethesda,
Yeah,
you're like you got more money than Disney. You guys should be. And now you got Microsoft money. So here's my deal with Starfield. I mean,
yeah,
I hope it's what I always wanted No Man's Sky to be. That's the
yeah.
first thing. And second, it's just like I love Elder Scrolls. And if you guys have put Elder Scrolls on the bench for 12 years because of this game, it better blow my mind.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right about
Because
that.
we're not getting Elder Scrolls 6 before like 2028, probably at this point.
Yeah, something like that. By the way, a confession: I've never played Skyrim. And again, that's all
But
mostly
there's only
because
like 8 billion versions of it. You could probably figure
yeah,
out somewhere.
yeah, it probably yeah. I think I tried to play one of the remasters because there's a million of them now on
Right.
PC, and like it was cool, but then I was like, I got distracted by other stuff. But like I said, I didn't historically grow up with fantasy, so that's why I skipped it. By the way, quick aside, going back to what we were talking about before, right? So I played the first two Mass Effects. I'm like, this is great. I need another game like this, right? And people are like, oh, you got to play Dragon Age, right? I'm like, but all this fantasy stuff. Like I like Lord of the Rings, but I don't know about that. But I needed to play something with those kind of dialogue choices, right? Because it got to a point where I was dreaming in dialogue choices. Like it was bad.
Where's my dialogue wheel? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You
So
want
I
to the
played,
office.
yeah, so I played Dragon Age, like, whoa, this is fucking awesome,
Yeah.
you know. And I'd love, and I'm such a geek. I would read all the codexes and just let myself get immersed in that. And then I remember, like a few years later, they announced Game of Thrones, right? That was coming to HBO. I'm like, that kind of seems a little interesting, a little bit gritty. And then when I said, Dragon Age was inspired by this, I'm like, I'm watching this shit, you know. So I saw the first season. And dude, literally in the space of a month and a half, I read all 5 books. I'm like, this is great, you know. So
so you've been waiting a while, just like me, huh? Well, I read the first book in the year 2000.
Oh wow, yeah. I know. I have a friend that's been reading them since the jump. Like
Yeah,
she started like when they first started coming out, you know.
it was one of those things. Like when the show was coming out, I was basically like lead advocate. I was trying to get everyone I knew to watch that show because I wanted the show to because Rome had just been canceled in season 2 right before that. I was like, this is going to be an expensive show, and for HBO to keep doing it, I got to get more people to watch it. And I wanted more people to watch it just so they could get as far as the Red Wedding.
Yeah,
that was my hope. I never in a million years I thought that thing would become the big, huge pop culture thing that it became. I mean, I always knew the story was amazing. I mean, it was always like my favorite fantasy series. I knew it was amazing books. I didn't think they'd adapt it faithfully. And then it turns out, once they ran out of source material, that's when it went to shit. But
exactly.
It's one of those things, like looking back in hindsight, it's like almost kind of feeling like you had this like little band that you loved and no one would listen to them. And then everyone's like, I'm the biggest Metallica fan ever. How that happened when you were listening to Metallica back in the day when like everyone was just like, oh, stupid, heavy metal, cool, bro. And then Metallica became mainstream and everybody loved it. Like, what the fuck? My mom's listening to Inner Sandman now.
Oh yeah, that kind of ruins things.
That's how it felt with me with Game of Thrones when I guess same thing happened with comic book movies. We had been getting made fun of since high school for loving comic books. I mean, I wore a Flash t-shirt under my baseball uniform in high school, and we were changing out. Everyone's making fun of me for wearing that shirt. And I was like, here we are 20 years later, and I'm hearing 2 moms, probably mid-40s, arguing about who is right between Captain America and Iron Man in Civil War. And I'm like, when the hell did this happen? How did this happen? It's like kind of like when wrestling got real big in the 90s. It's like, you guys made fun of me about this shit 2 years ago.
Yeah, isn't that funny how things work? Yeah, it's so weird because I remember, growing up, like you would try to hide that stuff, right. And now it got to a point, like especially when I started, like when I became a game journalist, like a lot of the girls I meet is because of gaming. Isn't that a trip? Like that, like you admitting you were a gamer, that was like repellent to women. But now it's like everybody's into it. And I have mixed feelings about that because on the one hand, I think it's great to have more people brought into it, but there's other people that have come into the party who want to change things now. I'm like, listen, we're welcoming to everybody, but things are done a certain way. It's like, imagine if you go to a party, again, it's like we're just gonna play a bunch of hard rock and heavy metal, right? One guy shows up, can you play a hip hop track, please? Okay, yeah, just play some Anthrax and Run DMC or something. Yeah, and Anthrax and Public Enemy. Play just do that. Yeah. And then they just they start putting more and more of their stuff in there. Then what you were there for the party for, it's just completely different now. So I get that feeling with media now. It's like we had our little nerdy spaces, and now other people came in and changed them. And I think it loses things again. But it's weird because I want more people to be into this stuff, but I don't know, man. It's
you want to see me tap dance that line? Here's how I tap dance that
yeah.
line. Why does everything that I love it has to be changed now because it needs to be for everyone? But anything that's not for me, you get told, oh, well, this isn't for you. Why is that? Why, for example, the new Masters of the Universe. Why the fuck did He-Man need to be changed to be for everyone? Why?
Yeah.
That's why you guys got She-Ra, because we had fucking He-Man. Why you got to take He-Man away from me? Why does it got to be for everyone? That She-Ra show wasn't for fucking everyone that just came out. And I got told, oh, well, that's not for you. So why does He-Man need to be for everyone? That's what I'm saying. This is selective bullshit is what drives me crazy with it.
I can't stand it. You're right. And I don't know how these people kind of like the cognitive dissonance. Don't they realize what's going on? You know, it's like you guys are saying one thing and then doing the other. It's like, I don't get it. But yeah, I didn't bother with those shows like the new He-Man. Like, okay, I even though I liked Kevin Smith, you know, I was like, I don't know
that guy,
about
the biggest fucking turncoat ever. Well, because he was one of us, man. What the fuck happened to that guy?
Yeah, remember like the his movies? Like I loved Clerks. Oh, the video school movies were so
Mallrats
good.
was the best.
Mallrats was great. Yeah, I love those movies. But yeah, he just changed, man. I like Kevin Smith was fat. You know, like I think something got lost when he lost weight. You know, but oh god,
more than weight. Yeah, because I was like, man, if you would have told me 20, 25 years ago they're going to reboot He-Man and Kevin Smith's going to do it, I'm like, it's going to be fucking amazing. You know?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and it's not even a matter of like, oh, you guys are just stuck in your old ways. You don't want to see it being readapted. No. Because about 20 years ago, or 15, 20 years ago, they had a He-Man remake on Cartoon Network, and it was fucking awesome.
Yeah,
it had like anime style and everything. They also redid
but like
Thundercats.
12 of us watched it. Yeah.
yeah. Did you see the Thundercats remake? That was really cool too.
Yeah.
You know,
like a year.
I liked how they kind of made the cats like kind of like bring all the other animals down. I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I thought it was a good revival for like, you know, guys like us who grew up with it. I remember when I was 15, right? Because I had watched Thundercats like crazy and I was a little kid, right? And then around 15 on the Cartoon Network, they were re-showing it again, right? Me and my boys got together. We're like, let's fucking go. Thundercats is back, baby. You know, the old show, right? So we watched the intro. Oh shit, look at this animation. This is amazing. Holy crap. You know, then the show starts and we're like, okay, and then it gets to the first commercial, like, then by the end of the episode, it's like, dude, Thundercats sucks.
If I'm being honest, nostalgia kind of works like that too, because I remember when I was a kid, I loved 18, you know, Mr. T. You know,
yes,
loved it. And it came out on DVD. I have something in my repertoire now I call the A-Team rule, where I will choose to leave something in my memory, because the first 2 seasons came out on DVD. I was excited. We ordered pizza. We were going to just hang out, watch the A-Team. We watched the first episode. We're like, man, this is pretty bad. But you know what? Sometimes pilots are like that. The show hadn't really found its legs yet. We were about episode 4, and I was like, this is awful. Was it always this bad? And I was like, that's when I realized some stuff is better left in your memory, you know, because a lot of that stuff that we loved, it's kind of rough, you know, because I re-experienced some of that stuff with my kids. And I'm like, man, Transformers was the shit when I was a kid. I was like, this is... I can see why it's not quite holding you guys' attention, you know? So it's...
no, that Thundercats is that for me. After that, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I need to revisit Masters of the Universe. I think I'm good. I don't need to revisit Transformers, although I will say every few years, because they keep re-releasing it, I do rewatch the Transformers movie, which is still really good. It's not perfect. Dude,
the Transformers movie, you mean where they fucking kill Optimus Prime and left us fucking scarred? Yeah, they don't do that shit to kids now. They won't do it now.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you know about what happened with the G.I. Joe movie, right? Because they were going to kill, was it Flint? They were going to kill him off in the movie, but after the reception that
Optimus Prime, kids crying and shit.
Yeah, so they changed it. They're like, oh, he's okay. But if you watch the movie, right? Because I actually it was like the 20th anniversary or 25th anniversary, couple months ago,
like stab him in the back.
Yeah, he stabbed him in the back. So they had a screening, like our anniversary screening. We saw it. If you watch the movie, he is dead.
Yeah,
he is dead. But somebody used to throw it. Hey, he's actually alive, guys.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. Here's why I think that the new Indiana Jones movie is going to be terrible. Well, one, Kathleen Kennedy. Here's the second reason. You're hearing about how this is the eighth most expensive movie ever made, $300 million. And they're trying to say, oh, it's because they had to de-age Harrison Ford. Dude, that shit doesn't cost as much as it used to anymore. Trust me, that's not as big a deal as you think it is.
Yeah.
You know why that movie cost so much? Is because they had the rumors of the fan screenings being terrible, and James Mangold denied the exact day they happened. Bullshit. That budget means they reshot more than half of that movie. At least this is Justice League all over again. They've reshot almost that whole movie because test audiences just shit all over it. Because you heard the rumor is that like basically at the end they go back in time and Harrison Ford dies and he like disappears. He like blinks out of existence. And then Phoebe Waller-Bridge is shown after that, like doing all the famous iconic Indiana Jones.
Oh
Yeah.
no!
And
Come
apparently,
on.
test audiences were like, "Fuck you," and so they
Yeah.
had to reshoot all this stuff.
Why do they have to do the most obvious thing? Hollywood, stop it. Like, before you even said that, I knew where you were going to end with. I'm like, oh, let me guess. The girl's going to take over, be the new Indiana Jones. Come on, Hollywood. What are we doing here? So predictable.
But not only that, they were going to kill him off and erase him from history.
And erase him. Wow.
her taking the Ark of the Covenant,
Yeah.
her running from the boulder, all that stuff, her finding the Holy Grail. I was like, what balls, Jesus.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's almost as bad as the last Terminator movie, where they just like invalidate Terminator 2, which is my favorite movie of all time. I don't know if you watched the last Terminator. Terrible movie, by the way.
I heard about what happens at the beginning of Dark Fate, and I was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, that franchise after 2, that's it. Like that. Okay, it's funny about that. Terminator, Predator, and Alien. After the second one, those franchises just wander.
I heard Prey was good, but I still haven't watched it. But yeah.
I didn't like that movie. I will say this: it is better than the last couple of Predator movies. It is absolutely better than the last one. The one with the Marines and stuff.
Predators.
Predators. Yeah, it's better than that. But it's like, okay, so you're telling me that Arnold Schwarzenegger, a big heavy dude, can't even physically fight a predator because it's so powerful. But a 97-pound girl that's wet could be fight a predator head on. Sure, I could believe
that happened, but I should have.
Yeah, but the thing is, the premise was so cool, right? It's like, imagine if you had a tribe of like Native Americans fighting a predator, like an entire tribe. That's cool. No, you just have one little girl doing it instead. Come on. That the premise. Oh my God. But yeah, it's sad what's happened to these franchises, man. With Terminator, I love Terminator. Leave it alone, please. Let's just stop it. Just leave it alone. It's good enough as it is.
Here's the thing: is like my kid's 10, and I'm that irresponsible parent that lets him watch R-rated movies, and he's declared that Terminator 2 is the greatest movie ever made. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you. It's that's a great choice. But after we watched it for like the third time, he was like, "Is there a Terminator 3?" I was like, "Nope."
That's a good parent right there, people.
No,
I'm going to ask you, because you just brought this up. Okay, you said irresponsible parent. Did you not watch those kind of movies when you were 10? Because I sure as fuck did.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a brother that was 6 years older, single parent. She wasn't ever there, So it was like we were fucking. It was the Wild West in the 80s, man. I'm just watching Friday the 13th when I was like 6, man.
Yeah,
it was great. So with me, I feel like it's just it's every kid's going to be different. If you feel like your kid can handle it, he's not waking. Now, I did probably jump the gun. This past Halloween, I showed him Saw, and he was sleeping in my bed that night, and I was like, all right, I might have progressed a little too fast, for him.
Yeah, you should have showed him what you were watching at that age.
Right.
He'd be able to handle that. But yeah,
he's freaked out by dolls. So Saw was a bad choice on my behalf. Yeah, the
80s was interesting. Like, we had action figures of R-rated movies. You had Predator, Terminator, RoboCop. About RoboCop.
I saw RoboCop in the theater. You think it was my kid my age see RoboCop? I was like fucking 7 seeing RoboCop with his arm getting blown off, before they edited it. So yeah,
good stuff. There's a RoboCop game.
The Wild West, man.
I love the 80s, man. And especially the music. Because I'm a big metal guy, obviously, so I love the 80s. But the funny thing with metal is, like, I became a real metalhead like in the late 90s, and I'll explain, because in the late 80s, early 90s and stuff, I was just watching whatever was on MTV at that point, right? I really liked the Black Album and all that. And I will freely admit, right, I still like hair metal. That stuff is cool to me.
Oh, yeah.
Like the music. People just rag on the visuals, but listen to the music; it's fucking good. But for years, right, I didn't know Metallica had albums before the Black Album.
Oh yeah,
right?
okay.
So my friend was like, "Dude, you got to listen to Injustice for All." I'm like, "What the fuck is that?" It's like it's before the Black Album. I'm like, okay, dude, I hear that album. That changed my whole life.
Right.
I'm like, what is this? Like, it just felt like when I had been listening to music my entire life, it was like trying to put like a round thing in like a square peg. It didn't fit. This was like square peg. And I'm like, oh, this is great. What else is like this? And then I started getting into Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, real Megadeth. Like, oh, like when I heard Rest in Peace, holy shit. that changed everything. Until this day, rest in peace. If aliens ever show up, I would be like, this is heavy metal. That and Painkiller from Judas Priest. Like, this is metal right
Yeah,
here.
you're speaking
You
my
know?
language right now.
Yeah. And
Judas
then I
Priest
got
might be my favorite metal band of all time, you know. So,
yeah. Yeah, Judas Priest. It's funny because I call Judas Priest and Iron Maiden the bands I inherited. You know, it's like I didn't discover them, but like they were given to me. And I still lean more towards Iron Maiden, but I listen to Priest more, which is interesting. You know, but like Iron Maiden, they kind of speak a little bit more.
That's like asking me to choose between my kids.
Yeah, it's hard, you know. And it's funny about.
And here's the thing about like Iron Maiden is I have this thing where I will encounter someone who's into metal and stuff. They're a little younger than me, and they'll say something like, I never really got into Iron Maiden. And I'm like, well, have you tried it? Like, nah, it was just kind of like before my time. So I never really picked it up. I'm like, well, motherfucker, Metallica was before your time. You're listening to that shit. I was like, you have no idea the wealth of stuff that you are sitting on right now. Go and find just go pick up Power Slave. Go pick up Peace of Mind. It'll melt your brain. And sure enough, within like 2 years, oh yeah, Iron Maiden's like my favorite band ever. I'm like, oh, weird how that works. So,
I thought they were before your time. Yeah, no, Iron Maiden is funny because I remember one of my friends, he brought over like one of those compilations, right? So I'm listening to him, like, yeah, this band's all right, you know. I was like, there's some cool stuff, but I was like more into heavier stuff back then, right? But then one of my other friends, he brought over Live After Death, right? That did it for me. Like, holy shit. When I heard Flight of Icarus, I'm like, whoa. And then the middle portion of Power Slave, you know, I'm like, oh, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I was so, this is going to sound weird. I was so proud that humans were able to produce music like this, you know? And it's funny because all I knew about Dune before the movie was the fucking To Tame a Land. Like that. And do you know Blind Guardian?
I know. Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Maybe
so they're a power metal band, and all their stuff is about like fantasy. They have an entire album called Nightfall on Middle Earth. It is based on the Silmarillion, right? And that's how I really got into them. But they also have a song about Dune. So my knowledge of Dune came from those two songs, right? You check out Blind Guardian. They're really cool. If you like Halloween, they're kind of in that vein. You know, and Iron Maiden as well. All their shit is just fantasy stuff. They literally have a song called Wheel of Time. That's how I learned about that. Learned about all these things from Blind Guardian. But after that, I just became a full-on metalhead. But it tapped into that nerdiness. I love that stuff. You know, it's like, you know, we're singing about far off worlds and stuff. We're not just singing about, oh, I did drugs today or whatever. It's like, I don't want to hear about that. Sing about something cool. But then obviously, you know, a lot of the 80s stuff that we listened to, thrash, it was all about nuclear war and all this other stuff, which that scarred our brains when we were kids too. It's like, when are the bombs gonna fall? You know, when are the
people now that you guys realize is like Gen X, our parents had nothing to complain about, so they created satanic panic. They were thought that our music was going to make us worship the devil, play our records backwards, and spread everybody's blood on the walls and do like demon sacrifices. They really believed. That's why I think I like the new season of Stranger Things, because they really leaned into the satanic panic with Dungeons and Dragons and shit like that. I was like, they really believed this. They really did. Our parents didn't have shit like social media to worry about and shit.
You're right about that.
They had to think about, I don't like this music you're listening to. I'm like, oh, okay.
You know what's funny? I was thought about this. Like, you know, they consider stuff like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest noise, but it's like, listen to death metal. I love death metal, but I'm like, that's what you thought. That's what our parents thought Iron Maiden was, or something.
Right?
You know, it's like you can't understand the lyrics anyway, but they're singing about some crazy shit. Like Cannibal Corpse has a song called Necropedophile. Like they weren't messing around, you know. But I love that. So I remember there was a point where me and one of our friends, we were trying to out heavy each other. Like, what is the heaviest, craziest band we could listen to? And they got to a point where I'm like, dude, we're just gonna like hang out in like construction lots just listening to shit headbanging if we keep going down this road, you know. We're just listening to the craziest fucking grindcore bands and shit. But I
have to understand the lyrics. It just sounds like the Cookie Monster thing, I'm not really into. But yeah, I mean, give me all the heavy.
No, it's in a
Pantera and shit. I would eat up stuff like that. But yeah, if it was just like, I'm like, nah, that's not for me. Even though like a friend of mine loved Children of Bodom. And I'm like,
Oh,
dude,
that's
they're
one of my
amazing.
favorite bands. Yeah,
They're
yeah.
amazing technical musicians. But then it sounds like a cat singing. I'm just,
It's funny you mention that because that's those kind of bands where what got me into death metal because I just jumped straight into Napalm Death. I'm like, okay, this is a little too much for me, But then one of my friends put me out to Children of Bodom, In Flames, Death, where the vocals you could still kind of understand them. They weren't just like, it's like a little bit higher. I'm like, okay, I could get into this. Plus the music was like, reminding me of Iron Maiden. So yeah, I'm into a lot most death metal genres. The only ones I can't get into are like black metal because it's just depressing shit. I'm like,
right.
I don't like that. And then doom metal is also the same thing. It's just too slow and plodding. I want things to be fast.
You ever get into symphonic metal?
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
Nightwish.
Yeah,
Nightwish is one of my favorite bands, and the actual creator of that band is actually like a watcher of my channel. We actually email back and forth now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nightwish is
I
dope.
mean, you listen to their music, it's not hard to believe that they're fantasy readers, I mean, for sure. But Michael brings up Faith No More, and I got to say, drawing a blank on his name right now, the singer, that might be one of the best vocal ranges I've ever heard.
Yeah,
was the singer of Faith No More, amazing.
Yeah, and Faith No More was so cool. I remember the video for Epic, right? With the fist and stuff. Like, oh wow, this is cool. Well, Mike Patton, right? Mike Patton.
Mike Patton, thank you. Yeah. I
He's
remember
great.
when was Angel Dust came out after that album, and everyone was like, "Oh God, they just kind of blew their opportunity. They'd hit the mainstream, and then they did an experimental album, and just like screwed over." And now you look back on it, Angel Dust is by far probably their most well received album from fans. So yeah. I mean, bands would still take chances back then. They took risks.
Yeah, they did, man. Man, think about like because nowadays metal's in an interesting state now, right? I remember for like a little bit, like because I was listening to it heavily for years, and then around like the early 2010s or so, I kind of just dropped off listening to newer bands. I was listening to the bands I liked, and then I came back to it a couple of years ago. I'm like, you guys haven't changed. It's the same thing. So it's like it still sounds cool, but no one's doing anything innovative anymore.
Metal as a genre is in the States just like non-existent. I mean, you would think with the advent of like satellite radio that would make like a little bit of a comeback or something, but it still isn't. But I mean, overseas, man, across the pond, it's so huge. It's still gigantic. That's why a lot of these bands like a Megadeth or somebody, they don't tour in the States anymore because it's like, am I going to play for 300 people or am I going to go over there and play for 50,000 people who still love metal music? So I understand why they tour overseas now. Sure, I thought I'd play for another big crowd.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to one of those European metal festivals because it's like, hey, what band do you like? We're playing all of them through a whole week. I'm like, that is so cool.
Yeah, I saw Iron Maiden for the first time right before lockdown happened, and it was awesome. It was a bucket list thing. I never got to see them, but I would still love to see them like in London or something with that crowd. I'm sure that would just be amazing experience.
Yeah, I remember I the first time I saw Iron Maiden was during the Brave New World tour when they reunited with Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith. And I don't think I've missed any show after that. So I've been like, it is funny about Iron Maiden, right? Like when I first started going to their shows, I was one of the young guys, right? A bunch of old dudes were there. Now I'm the old guy, because Iron Maiden, what's great about them is they keep releasing new albums and they keep refreshing their fan base. So it's always a bunch of kids there, right? On the flip side, right? And I know you love them because you wear their shirts. I fucking love Tool. Tool is one of my favorite bands of all time, right? They hadn't released an album for 15 years, right? So when they finally released a new album, I went to go see. I think I saw them like 3 times. Me and my boy, we love Tool. We're like, yo, okay, they're playing like in the tri-state area we're going. And it's like, look at the fans are the same age as us. I remember my friend specifically, he went to the store to buy the album. And he's online. He's like, man, look at all these old bastards getting Tool. And then he's like, oh shit, I'm one of those old bastards.
Yeah, I said that like basically when friends were like, hey, how come you don't come to the bar anymore? I'm like, remember those old people at the bar who used to make fun of us? Yeah, that's us now. That's us. That's why I don't go to the bar anymore.
Yeah. No, what I do is I go, and it's funny because I never thought I'd had a watering hole. I actually have had one for like 7 years, a barcade. And it's like a mix of what I like. It's like you got our arcade cabinets behind me, right? I got the bar, and then they're blasting hard rock. I'm like, this is great, but it's a good mixed crowd. At least I don't feel like the old guy, so which is good. But yeah, there are some things you got to kind of give up, like heavy drinking. I'm Dominican, so I got down when I was younger, and you're a Texan, so I know you got down too.
I got Irish roots, buddy. I
yeah,
can drink.
forget about yeah. It's ridiculous, right? So I'm 43 now, so I'm like, I drink I only drink like maybe every couple of months, and I don't even go that hard because I like sleeping. I enjoy resting nowadays. It's not like when I was in my 20s, just going to fucking metal concerts all the time. Because in New York, there was a concert like every weekend, basically. Just destroying.
Man, if I went to a metal concert now, I'd probably blow an ACL.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw Iron Maiden. We were up on the lawn in the woodlands here in Texas, and it was like, there's no mosh pits and stuff for me at this age. No thanks.
You wouldn't do that stuff. But even now, man, like till this day, like if it's silent, I always hear. I blew my fucking ears, man, because I was just like, I didn't care. I'm like, I'm enjoying the music. I go to school the next day all fucked up. I couldn't hear nothing.
What's the loudest concert you think you ever heard? Because mine will actually surprise you.
Okay, this is probably not going to surprise a lot of people. Anytime I saw Slayer, I was like, okay, here we go. Like my ears would just be shot to hell. Quick thing before you go on, I remember one of my friends. We brought him to his first Slayer concert, right? And he like idiot. He goes right into the pit at the beginning of the show before Slayer even got on. Right? I forgot who was opening for him. He got fucked up. They had to take him away. Like he was bleeding and everything. Right? And then we didn't see him in school for a week. I'm like, oh shit, is this guy all right? And then when he comes back, biggest metalhead ever. He got converted by fire that night. But anyway, what's the loudest show?
AC/DC.
I can believe that. I can believe that.
And I was like, I don't know if it was the guitars or if it was the cannons for those about to rock at the end. But I was fucking deaf. And I think the second loudest, believe it or not, was Kiss.
Oh, nice.
I mean, those are Kiss because they have so much pyro.
Yeah. Those are two bands I've never seen live, but I've always wanted to. I love those bands. They're just great. And it's funny about Kiss. Funny story about them. I didn't really get into them until late. I got into them in a weird way because I like their 80s stuff, right? But then when I try to hear their 70s stuff, I'm like, I'm looking at the fake paint and everything. I'm like, I'm expecting them to sound like Children of Bodom, right? And they're not. And it's weird, and I'm just listening to the music. I'm like, this is weird. But then I remember they released like they had a box set of all their old concerts from the 70s and stuff, right? And VH1 was playing them, and I watched them like, oh shit, I get it now. Yeah. This is so cool. That's a show.
It's one of those. Even if you don't really like their albums, you should see them live because they're just incredible. If it's still now, I mean, they're fucking like what's in their 60s, and they're still kick ass live.
Yeah, no, I like them, but it is funny about me, like Kiss and like AC/DC, to me that's the softest stuff I listen to.
Right.
Before that, I'm like, don't get me wrong, I really like Led Zeppelin, but I have to be in a specific mood to listen to them. Because I want to be kicked in the face. But so I like that. Pink Floyd is really cool. I like if I'm in a certain mood, I can listen to just the atmosphere.
Well, see, the good thing is like there's a metal counterpart to everything. I think like people are like, oh, I like Pink Floyd, but it's too metal. I'm like, well, then listen to Mastodon. That's heavy metal Pink Floyd.
Yeah, there you go.
So I feel like there's definitely Gene Simmons is 73. Jesus, that means I'm getting older. Shit. Because I remember when they were old when I was in high school and they reunited. Shit. All right.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you know this. It's a fun story. That's the reason why Frank Miller created The Dark Knight Returns, because he was like, wait a minute, I'm older than Batman now. No, I can't have that. So he wrote a story about an old ass Batman. But now he is older than that Batman. Time gets us, Mike. Time gets us.
Father Time is undefeated. Really, really is. So anything you want to talk about before we run? Anything we haven't talked about yet? You want to talk about anything at all?
Actually, what I want to ask you, what are some games that you liked growing up? Like, or what was the game or the system that really like made you go, you know what? Gaming is it. I love this stuff.
I mean, you're a Gen Xer. It was all about the original NES, right? This original Nintendo, I think, is what I cut my teeth on, honestly. And I think that was when I just grew to love Zelda. Zelda's been my favorite gaming franchise ever. Every time I think I'm fucking done with Nintendo, they're just never going to learn. They keep making the same mistakes over and over. And then they're like, oh, hey, here's a new Zelda game. I'm like, God damn, I'm going to go be right back. I got to go buy the whole new Nintendo console to play Zelda on it. And I've kind of passed that to my kid now, to where we play like all the Zelda stuff together. And in fact, we just got the remaster of Skyward Sword on the Switch, and that famously is the only Zelda game I never finished because I hated the motion controls on the Wii.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, you can play with the controller now. I'm like, okay, great, that's great. They fixed the only problem I have with that game. They're even harder. They're even harder because you have to use like the right analog stick and kind of like flick it in that direction to make Link swing the sword that way. It's fucking hard, man. so
that sounds hard.
It's one of those games where you had to get really, really technical to beat like bosses and stuff. I'm like, dude, we're getting our asses kicked by like regular goblins and shit on it right now. So we're going to have to practice with that one a little bit. But yeah, it's always been Zelda because of, I think, that very first Zelda game on the NES with the gold cartridge, which was just like amazing time. And and that's like that's why I like Breath of the Wild, because it maybe remind me of that, where it just drops you in a world and says, figure it out. I think that's why I liked Breath of the Wild, because it kind of did that, just like the original Zelda did, where it's just like, here you go, figure it out. Here's a sword, drop you in the forest, have fun. That's what I need out of my Zelda games. So, yeah.
You didn't get bothered by the I call it the weapon fragility. You didn't get that's what killed it for me, man. I beat the game. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't. I hated how like I whacked somebody 3 times and my sword breaks. I'm like, come on.
Here's the thing: when we first played that, people don't remember this now. That came out like the same week as Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes, it did.
And I played Breath of the Wild first because I'm a Zelda guy, and I got so annoyed with it. I was like, fuck this, because it was so hard. I was just dying nonstop. And I said, forget it. And so I played Horizon Zero Dawn, which I'm like, hey, you know what? This has a challenge, but I don't feel like it's impossible. And then I was like, all right, well, it is a new Zelda game. I'm going to buckle down and figure out what to do. And then I realized, oh, well, just don't go to that area where it's impossibly fucking hard. Maybe try to explore a little bit. And that's when I got a little more used to it. But yeah, the weapons breaking did get annoying. But I think after a while, you just, you got used to it, I think.
Yeah, I literally went around enemies. I'm like, no, I'm going to preserve my swords. I'm not fighting nobody. It got better when I got the Master Sword or whatever it's called. That was kind of cool. But it's funny with me. I played Horizon Horizon Zero Dawn first. And that was the game I had kind of been waiting for that generation, because that generation was kind of disappointed me. Right. And the game just ticked all the boxes, right? Then I played Zelda on Switch. I'm like, oh, what's up with these graphics? After playing Horizon, Yeah. And I really wanted to like it more because I think the optional dungeons were so imaginative. The puzzles, they were so cool. But yeah, the weapon fragility, I got that from Jim Sterling, by the way. I didn't come up with that term. It just really, it's weapon degradation, I think it's called. Yeah. But that really
your shit breaks. And weapons were basically made out of glass in that game. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, no wonder you guys lost to Ganon. It's like your weapons kept breaking. That's why you couldn't win,
You say before, this is a perfect topic to go out on here. Mm-hmm. You said you felt like that generation was kind of a disappointment before that. I think with that and then God of War, I felt like it did recover a little bit, but I said the same thing, and I'll say it about this generation. So I was like, here I feel like back-to-back generations, when your biggest releases are remakes, something's wrong. Something's broken. So people talk about, they've got no creativity in Hollywood anymore. All they're doing is remakes and reboots. Well, same shit's going on with video games, in my opinion.
No, you're right. And again, I just find it eerie how these two industries are mimicking each other. It's the same thing. I've been complaining about this current generation since before it began, because the games they announced were, like you said, they were remakes or they were cross-gen games. I'm like, why am I going to spend $500 on a console if I can just play the same game on my PS4? It doesn't make any sense. And even now, I'm still waiting for this generation to start.
When it was coming out, I told everybody I do my weekly videos where I just talk about what's going on in the world at the end. And it was the release week of PS5 and whatever the new Xbox is called. That shit is so confusing, by the way. Can you just name your systems right, Xbox? Anyway. And I was like, are you guys excited and ready to not be able to buy it? And here we are, 3 years later, it's still fucking hard to find these things. So it's just, I don't know. And it's like, why are you excited? What's coming out for it that you got to have besides saying, I got a PS5? What's exciting about it?
Yeah, you're right, because all of last year, they didn't release any actual current gen games, right? Because at least the first year you had a couple, right? You had Ratchet and Clank, right? And Returnal on PS5. Xbox still hasn't gotten any fucking exclusives at all.
Oh, Xbox is doing it the right way. They're just buying everybody.
They're just buying everybody. Yeah, you know what? That I've always said this on my podcast. That is their greatest exclusive of all, money. But yeah, no, it's just sad. Like, and you're right. Last generation, it kind of started because remember, back in our day, there was a clear delineation between generations. It was like when you went from like a Nintendo or Super Nintendo, like okay, this is on a whole other level. And then N64, PS1, like you always saw this stuff. But starting with the PS3 and PS4 crossover, like, wait a minute, hold on. I'm not seeing these graphical jumps. I think the move to HD was probably the biggest jump we've had in recent memory, right? Remember, you had the PS2 era, then we went to the PS3 era or Xbox 360. So that was the dominant system in America. It's like, oh shit, look at these games. They're widescreen. They look crisp and nice and stuff. But now we're kind of getting diminishing returns when it comes to graphics, but also we're also getting diminishing returns when it comes to gameplay because these companies, just like movies, they want to play it safe. They want to know, okay, we're going to put money on a safe commodity. We're not going to try to rock the boat. And now we're just getting these like same kind of AAA games. And then you have the indie stuff, which is doing innovative things. But those graphics look like, I don't care for that stuff.
And that's why I had no problem switching to the PC Master Race.
There you go.
I had no problem with it because it was like, are exclusives really the only reason I'm still playing consoles? I was like, no, I think here's another thing I can't stand about this. This is my biggest gripe about current consoles. Can I just put the game in and fucking play it? Yes. I don't need to sign in. I don't want to do any of this fucking updates. And I put my system on the idle thing, so it'll do the updates automatically, but I still have to confirm. So then I'm like, okay, great. I've got 2 hours. Wait, I got to do an update. It's going to take an hour and 20 minutes. I'm like, fuck it. I put on Steam, shit plays within like a fucking second.
That's it.
So that's why I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I hate that. It's like, you're right. You have a limited time. We all do. We're adults. And this feature is supposed to just download all these updates in the background. Never does it. So yeah, it sucks. It sucks. You set time aside and then you just got to wait like 3 hours for the shit to download.
It's the worst. Yeah. Fix your shit, consoles. So that's why I said I think Nintendo will be the only one that I still keep buying as I go. I mean, look, everything on Xbox is crossplay now. I have no need to buy an Xbox console anymore. I can play it on my PC.
I don't have an Xbox, so I don't need to have a PC. I'm good. Yeah.
So, but I was like, PS5 has had nothing because they still have. I mean, like I wanted a new God of War. I wanted Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West. They put both those on PS4. I'm fine. So I don't need to go buy that new console, even if I could find it. And what's the point? What's the point? I mean, is the graphical jump or the performance really worth me paying $600 to play God of War on the PS5 as opposed to playing on the PS4? I don't think so.
No. I own a PS5. I'll be the first person to tell people don't buy this thing. Don't buy it. You don't need to. You're good with your PS4 or Xbox One, or PC.
All right. So I feel like this was way too short. I feel like we could probably talk for at least a couple more hours at least, but
probably
I have a prior commitment, so I better go ahead and run off here. But I gotta say, hey, we should do this again because, like I said, there's still plenty of ground that we didn't cover. I mean, we haven't even begun to gripe about the TV shows yet. I mean, there's so much stuff we haven't crossed yet, like everything that sucks on TV right now. We haven't even got into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that next time because I definitely want to collaborate. This was a lot of fun. It's just because, again, I'm just so busy talking about like games and hardware, whatever. It's just nice to just talk about other things I really enjoyed that, don't make me money, but I just do for my enjoyment. And I'm glad I'm not the only one that feels this way about how horrible some of this shit is.
Well, whenever I would try to do this stuff on my book channel, people would basically give me a stay in your lane. And I understood. Yeah. You're here for the book stuff. You don't want to hear what I think about the fucking new Elvis movie. I get that, even though that's one of my most viewed videos. Anyway, someone wanted to hear it, but I got it. And I say, that's how I'm going to make this second channel. So if I want to do something like this, go live, talk about whatever, just complain about whatever the news is.
Yeah, I think it's smart. By the way, just for the record, I enjoyed that other stuff you were doing on your channel. Like I want to hear your thoughts on movies or whatever. But I understand you're a certain brand or whatever. By the way, just before we end, because I'm just curious, like, so for you, this is just like purely for fun, right? You don't have like any aspirations of being like like a big time influencer, leaving your day job for this stuff.
No. I was telling this to Murphy the other night is that doing this on YouTube is never going to pay as well or offer benefits or pension, all that stuff for the,
Yeah.
actual day job that I have. It'll never ever cross that. And it's just something that I want to keep fun. If I started treating it like a job, I wouldn't be having fun with it anymore. And people think when I complain about like the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm stuff, that's just because I'm a numbers guy, I'm a data analyst.
Yeah.
So I obviously I pay attention to stuff like that. It doesn't mean I'm not having fun. I mean, it's still why I'm doing it. So this is book money for me. This isn't quit your job money. That's what people don't realize is we don't make very much money off you. If you're one of those beauty people who do like the makeup and all that stuff, and every video you put out gets like 2 million views, yeah, that might be quit your job money. But I'm lucky to break 3,000 views on a video. So
yeah, no, that's
yeah.
good. Yeah, because it keeps it more pure that way. Because you're not just purely driven to like put food on the table with this shit.
Right.
So that's good to know.
I don't ever want to count on this for revenue. Yeah, because it doesn't really work that well. Well, my man, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I do this every other Friday or so, whatever. So you're always welcome to hop in whenever you want. It's an open invitation anytime.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely make sure to do that. And for you guys who've been joining us, and we're going to give a shout out to everybody in the chat right now. You guys are awesome. If you want to see some of my rantings on Twitter, you can follow me at Romudeth, ROMUDTH. My bio, there's links to everywhere you can find me. I write for Tom's Guide. I also host the Throwdown Show podcast twice a week, a video game podcast, Thursday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, Sunday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Thursday is when we just do regular gaming news, and Sunday is where we answer fan questions. We're about to hit 425 episodes for each of those. We've been doing this for like 10 years. It's crazy, So I don't make any money off the shit. I remember I got my a check from YouTube like last week. I'm like, oh shit, look at that. They gave me like $100. Twitch actually pays a little bit better, but I can't live off of that either. I get because on Twitch, because that's where I stream. What bits are? This people just throwing pennies at you or whatever, but that shit adds up. So
well, I know a lot of my gamer friends left YouTube to go do Twitch because YouTube takes so much off the top for super chat and thanks and all that stuff. So
so I upload my videos to YouTube just to have a place for them. But I stopped live streaming on there because 2017. I'll end it on this. That was the best year for my podcast and the worst. Right before Adpocalypse happened, like we were blowing up. We were getting like 7,000, 6,000, 8,000 like views and stuff. It was great. And then after Apocalypse, no recommendations anymore. So I just like you, I'm not gonna use this. Like I'm not gonna rely on this for like my my life. Like I'll just do this for fun and just leave it at that. But yeah, check me out on Twitter and YouTube and Twitch and keep the conversation going, but just be civil because I will block your ass.
Yeah, definitely follow him on Twitter, guys. But if you get your feelings hurt very easily, I wouldn't do that. But I love your Twitter account. I think it's great. It's refreshing. And when you first followed, I was like, oh, who's this guy who's like blasting The Last of Us? Because I feel like I'm the only other one who's like saying that I don't think this is going to be very good. So, it's a great follow. And I'm glad we got to make this happen. And we'll definitely do it again.
Of course.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you probably.